Regularly scheduled programming will not be seen, so that we may bring you the following special.
This is 10, the news station.
This is WJAR-TV, the outlet company in Providence.
Produced by the world's largest staff of film correspondents.
I'm Blake here to bring you the complete weekend news report.
Hello, and welcome to the world around us.
Now, News Watch 10.
Details upcoming on 10 Extra Effort News.
News Watch 10, your eye on the world continues.
From Television 10, Southeastern New England's leading news station, this is News Watch 10. News Watch 10 with Doug White and Larry Estepa. Patrice Wood. And Gary Lay. This is News Watch 10, the 5:30 report. Now, from Southern New England's leading news station, Frank Coletta, Art Lake, and Tony DiBiasio. This is News Watch 10 at sunrise.
WJAR Channel 10, Providence, New Bedford. From the cornerstone of Southern New England broadcasting, first with the news, from generation to generation, into the 90s and beyond. Thank you for turning to 10. From WJAR, this is News Channel 10 at 6.
NBC 10 News at 5 starts right now.
NBC 10, WJAR, celebrating 75 years of turning to 10.
Good evening and welcome to our 75th anniversary celebration. I'm Patrice Wood.
And I'm Gene Valicenti. It's our Diamond Jubilee, you might say. Well, we've come a long way from the 5th floor of a downtown Providence department store.
And tonight we're going to show you just how far and give you a rare look behind the scenes here at NBC 10. Let's begin, as they say, at the beginning. It was July 10th, 1949.
You know, actually, hold on just a second. Let's turn it over to someone who might be able to tell this story better than we can.
Hello again, I'm Frank Coletta. I announced my retirement from NBC 10 during a live broadcast 5 years ago tonight on our 70th anniversary. But you know that famous line from The Godfather 3, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. I'm happy to be back and to be your guide all the way back to 1949. Along the way, I'll get a little help from some of my old friends, like first-generation broadcaster Art Lake.
World War II hadn't been over for 3 years. You could buy a cozy Cape Cod house for just under $10,000. You could drive off in a brand-new Chevrolet for $1,500. The Narragansett beer flowed freely from the brewery in Cranston out of bottles.
That was when Rhode Island's first television station went on the air, July 10th, 1949. We started out as Channel 11, by the way, and moved one notch down the dial 4 years later. Home base back then was the Outlet Department Store, one of the first discount department stores in Rhode Island. It had been around since the 1890s. In 1922, department store officials started a radio station in the building. It showcased local talent in shows like The Kiddies Review. It was also a great way to sell radios and advertise other outlet store products. A couple of decades later, why not do the same with television? Well, believe it or not, it was a tough sell for some outlet store officials.
The people who held its purse strings were not convinced that building a television station would be a wise investment.
They were dealing with a board of directors, trustees, bankers, lawyers, non-entertainment world type people. And one of them is alleged to have said, we don't want to go into television. It's just radio with pictures, and people aren't going to want to sit there looking at pictures.
NBC network officials and local visionaries helped to change those minds, and WJAR-TV went on the air. The first voice heard was that of announcer Jim Metcalf, and the first program was a Boston Red Sox game.
A new age had dawned for the outlet. The company began to employ men and women who were pioneers in this remarkable means of communication. No one at the time ever dreamed that television would continue to provide revenue, careers, and opportunities long after the department store had ceased to exist.
No one really knew yet what would make good TV, so those television pioneers were up for pretty much anything.
Anything went. If you got an idea, bring it in. We'll try it.
Just did it. Yeah, there was definitely a sense of pioneering, and it certainly wasn't just another job to us. It was life.
During the fun-filled 50s, WJAR-TV had scads of local programming. It was all done live, and an awful lot of it was done back-to-back, too. Do you have any pictures of those?
Well, a few are. Remember, now, this was the days before videotape, before color.
Art Lake and another early broadcaster, Walter Covell, reminisced about our earliest days, 40 years ago for our 35th anniversary special. They were there when WJAR was creating 105 to 110 live local programs every week. Programs that featured music, housekeeping tips, recipes, children's programs, game shows, and movies. Of course, it wasn't all entertainment. We broadcast the news of the day almost from day one, but that was a work in progress.
Our original newscast was delivered by a Western Union boy in a sealed envelope about 10 o'clock at night.
Then came national newsreels.
Produced by the world's largest staff of film correspondents.
And eventually, local announcers like Russ Van Arsdale, who visited us in the 1980s to talk about his experience during the 1950s.
During the early years, our newscasts were short and consisted mostly of slides, still photos, and film.
Clive Lake here to bring you the complete weekend news report.
Our announcers read the news, but they did not report it firsthand. For that, we had the first generation of news photographers, including George Clark and Frank Wildenhain.
I happened to have my own camera, and I knew how to process the film at home. So I wrote a letter to the station. I said, look, how's this for an idea? I can shoot some pictures for you, and I can process them the same day and bring them down to you the same day, and you can put them on the air the same day, and this was unheard of at that time.
I came here in 1954, the day before the Hurricane Carol. That's what gave me the job. It was an ill wind that doesn't blow somebody some good. We had the little Bell & Owl camera, which is a silent camera, 16 millimeter. Everything was black and white in those days.
And our photographers and engineers were always innovating, like when they were told to find a way to provide live aerial shots.
NBC requested that we employ helicopter shots. Now, the equipment we employed was not of the best. It was regular old-fashioned tube equipment, naturally. And the tubes jumped out of the sockets, the bolts loosened up. We finally ended up with everything laying on mattresses to alleviate this vibration problem. Now, this was the first, as far as we knew, attempt to use a helicopter live in broadcasting.
When you left me
in 1959, WJAR celebrated 10 years on the air with a big blowout party, a circus, a parade, and a downtown Providence concert featuring local performers like Dick Domain and even national acts like the Four Lads.
Watching all the girls go by.
And our headliner, Connie Francis, who had this Billboard Top 10 hit at the time.
A lipstick on your collar, so the sail on you.
Our fans were so excited, things briefly got out of hand.
Oh, easy. Help! Help! Everybody's so excited they don't know what to do. I wish they'd stand still.
And I'll never forget the terror of the waves of people. They made the stage rock. You could just feel it, and the frenzy.
Order was eventually restored, and the show, as it almost always must, went on.
Frank, we're going to hold you there for now. 10 years down, 65 to go.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, WJAR in the 60s and beyond.
Here's a bit of WJAR trivia. In 1960, WJAR and the Outlet Store stepped in to help Rhode Island fight the outbreak of a dangerous infectious disease. What was it? Measles, diphtheria, polio, or tuberculosis? The answer when we come back.
And the Navy came up with nurses, corpsmen, the vaccine, and the gun. And that day I remember it was raining like mad,
and the line stretched all the way around the outlet company.
In 1960, WJAR and The Outlet hosted what was, at the time, the largest mass inoculation ever held in a single day, providing an estimated 12,000 polio vaccines.
Hi, I'm Health Check Time reporter Barbara Morse. That 1960 inoculation drive was just the first of WJAR's commitment to our community. About a decade later, we launched a full-time medical reporting beat.
Federal officials are expected to decide within 3 weeks.
Denise LeClaire was the first in the late 70s.
So far, this monitoring system is just an experiment.
Followed by Carrie Jackson in the early 80s.
Reporter Kathy Ray joins us live from our newsroom with the latest in health news today. Kathy?
Patrice, we begin Health Check News this Monday with a word of caution.
Kathy Ray handled the beat from the mid-80s to the mid-90s, and the late Ginger Casey also contributed to our health reporting during her time here. I've been proud to carry the torch for close to 30 years now through many hairstyles. Not to mention Health Fit Expos, blood drives, skin cancer checks, and so much more. Celebrating 75 years with you, I'm Barbara Morse.
As Southern New England was transitioning out of the 1950s into the turbulent 60s, WJAR was headed into some big changes too.
Well, that's for sure. Like Dorothy leaving Kansas for Oz, we'd soon be moving from drab, black and white into the world of living color, eventually growing into the new station you know today. But now back to Frank.
WJAR survived its first 10 years, and the turbulence of that 10th anniversary celebration may have foreshadowed the extraordinary changes ahead.
You are invited on a unique tour of our magnificent State House in Providence, Rhode Island, located on the crown of beautifully landscaped Smith's Hill.
One big change, we went from black and white to color. Our first color broadcast was October 1963. Host Honey Calvi got a personal tour from Governor John Chafee.
I was noticing your carpet here. It's a pretty shade of blue. What shade is that?
Well, they call that state blue.
I noticed the chairs are a beautiful shade of red, and I like that frill on the back. That's all in brocade.
Our cameras started to take viewers into a number of other places they'd never seen before, like the Texas Towers military platform off Nantucket, with Betty Adams in her show, The World Around Us.
The Texas Towers are a very important link in the North American defense system of our country.
Betty Adams and TV host Jay Kroll also introduced us to some of the biggest stars around.
And from that show, I understand that you even drive down the highways without driver's license.
A fellow named Gene Roddenberry, who was a producer of a series called The Lieutenant on NBC about 3 or 4 years ago, got the idea. I had worked for him on The Lieutenant once, and he said to my agent, I have a science fiction show in mind that I'm going to put pointed ears on that guy.
In the 70s, local TV started to get serious about local news. Around 1974, station management began to hire experienced broadcast journalists.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Lehman. At the top of the news tonight, President Ford has refused this evening to spell out.
From Dave Lehman to Vince Gibbons in '76, and the legendary Doug White in 1978.
Doug White. Governor, in a recent speech to the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, you promised no new taxes next year.
It was also a time of technical change as we moved from film to videotape. And during our 30th anniversary year, as we moved out of the outlet department store into the brand new black granite broadcast house that we'd constructed just next door. Within a couple of years, the outlet store chain was sold off and then shut down, a shock to many Southern New Englanders.
I'm disappointed. We'll miss the outlet very much.
And in 1986, Art Lake and I were on the air that morning when we smelled smoke and soon realized that just steps away,
a report of a possible fire on the top of the outlet building.
The vacant outlet building was indeed on fire.
Firefighters shown here on the broadcast house roof. There you can see the explosion, throwing the firefighters to the deck of broadcast house.
Flames up about 300 or 400 feet, smoke up about 1,500 feet. This is Spy in the Sky, Tony DiBiasio.
4 years later, the building, an important part of our history, was torn down. In the grand scheme of things, we did not stay in broadcast house all that long, about 14 years. In 1992, we sold the building to Johnson & Wales and renovated an old jewelry factory building in Cranston to be our new home. April 18th, 1993, we debuted a splashy new set. And a couple of months later, NBC's Today Show let us borrow Katie Couric to help show it off to a national audience.
Looks like somebody went crazy with the pastels, but
Wow.
I like it.
Yeah.
Do you?
I don't
This
get
is,
it. What is it supposed to be? Is that the world or something? Maybe?
No, it's not supposed to be anything. It's art, honey. It's art, babe.
We topped that visit a year later, May 1994.
President Bill Clinton arrives in Rhode Island, an historic first visit as president.
Not just a visit to Rhode Island, the President of the United States was in our Cranston studios for a presidential town meeting, covering topics ranging from policy to more personal matters.
This health care plan will not take away from you any benefit you now have.
I would like to know what it was like growing up without your father, because I live with just my mom, and sometimes I start to miss my dad.
What we have to do is be grateful for our parents that are sticking with us and helping us, and just make the best we can with our lives, okay? Good for you, pal. Thanks. Give him a hand.
The years since have brought some seismic shifts in our industry. Some have involved technology. We transitioned to an automated control room for putting our newscasts on the air.
In the past, when I directed a show, I would just call out what I wanted different people to do. I'd want the camera to get this shot, I'd want videotape to roll this tape, audio guy to open this mic. What we've now done is condensed it, and I now have to type that sort of information out. We just play it.
You're watching NBC 10 News.
This signal is going to go away.
And in 2009, every TV station in the country had to switch their broadcast signals from analog to digital.
Off.
You may remember having to change to a digital antenna if you did not already have cable or fiber.
I have an outside antenna.
Now, did you make the switch yet? Did you get your box so you're ready?
Yes, I did.
The change allows stations to offer a better quality signal and to broadcast on sub-channels with more programming options. Of course, another big change over the past 3 decades has been the growth of digital media. In the mid-90s, we launched our first website, initially called NBC10WJAR.com, but later changed to what you all know by now, turn-to-10.com. One big upgrade happened in 2006, and our longtime former web manager, Mia DiBenedetto, gave us a tour of the changes.
Probably the biggest change on our homepage is going to be the navigation. We've taken all the clutter off the top of the page now.
Our website has earned regional and national journalism awards and is a critical tool in our news gathering process today. You'll see most news there and on our app as it happens, well before you see stories on TV. And WJAR's digital footprint had expanded to social media, Facebook, X, which used to be Twitter, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
On average, we're only supposed to see about 14 named storms.
You know I'm not on TikTok. You should also know that as the broadcast and digital world grows and changes, WJAR will grow and change with it, just as we have for the past 75 years, without fail. For this 75th anniversary celebration, I'm Frank Coletta. Salute.
Thanks, Frank. That's a lot to digest.
It is, but there's still more to come. In fact, you will not want to miss a reunion 15 years in the making.
Here's a bit of WJAR trivia. In our 75-year history, how many chief meteorologists has WJAR had? 3, 4, 7, 8? The answer when we come back. In 1968, John Ghiorsi became Rhode Island's first TV meteorologist, and counting his tenure, WJAR has only had 3 chief meteorologists: John, Gary Lay, and now Mark Searles.
Hi everyone, I'm Chief Meteorologist Mark Searles, here to show you the evolution of weather forecasting at NBC 10. It all started in the early 1950s in a sort of unique way.
Let's get together, talk about the weather, come rain or come shine.
Eileen Raleigh, who sang the forecast along with ad copy.
Then I would race over behind camera to get to the world's largest selling mattress design in cooperation with leading orthopedic surgeons. No humps, no bumps, no buttons.
Within a few years, weather reporting got a little more serious.
Hi, I'm Nancy Byers. It pays to be prepared, and I'll have the latest weather information for you tonight at 6:25 on The Weather Show. See you then.
Nancy Byers and Bunny North reported the weather that way into the early 60s.
Art Lake here to bring you the complete weekend news report.
Art Lake would read the news and weather, but something didn't sit right.
I would read this glorious forecast about sunny days and mild temperatures and would pack the station wagon and leave early in the morning for the beach with the kids and the wife and sit in fog for the rest of the day. So I decided I was going to find out what went wrong with weather forecasting.
So Art started forecasting the weather. And when Bunny North was about to retire in 1968, this guy showed up on the scene. John Giorsi was an Air Force veteran working for the Travelers Weather Service in Connecticut.
I actually drove over on a day off with my wife Connie and looked for the looked for the TV station. The station I was working in Hartford, Connecticut was brand new. It was state of the art, beautiful building, and I rode down Weybosset Street in Providence looking for the TV station, and all there were was stores. So I went to a cop and said, "Where's Channel 10?" And he pointed, and it was the outlet store, and it was actually on the 5th floor of the outlet store. So I went upstairs and just walked in and said, "You guys looking for someone to do weather?"
And that's how John Giorsi became the area's first television meteorologist. Gary Lay followed a similar career path, the U.S. Navy, and eventually a job at a little startup you might have heard of called the Weather Channel. His WJAR job interview was a little different.
John Sohill, previous general manager of way back, who hired me, came out to California and we played golf for the weekend. That was my job interview.
Gary joined us in 1984 and retired in 2015. He, John, and I recently got together virtually to talk about our most memorable weather events.
John Giorsi and Gary Lay, it is fantastic to see you guys. I believe this might be the first time the three of us have been together, although it's virtually. We've been together maybe in 15 years since February of 09, maybe, right? When John retired. Does that sound right?
Yeah, easily that, Mark. Yeah, long time ago.
Guys, let's talk for a moment right now about some memorable storms in your careers. John, do you have any in particular that stand out to you?
Obviously, Mark, the storm that really comes into my mind right away is the blizzard of 78. That's probably the one most people in my generation think about as well.
Within this area, 3 feet or more of snow.
And it was memorable, not only because of the storm itself being such a massive storm and a long range event. I mean, it lasted for days. It was also something where we had a pretty good idea on the idea that we were going to get a big snowstorm on Friday prior to the storm.
And the storm, Vince, is still not moving and still growing larger.
And then Art was, he was on weekend weather for us on Saturday and Sunday. And I talked with him on Sunday about it, and, everything looked like it was really going to be very large. And I think we were in the 12 to 24 inch range, in forecasting and things like that, which turned out to be just half of what we got. But when early Monday came, I went into the station very early in the morning, but the snow started sometime in the mid-morning, and I didn't leave there until Thursday. We all went down and slept in the furniture section of the outlet department store, which was like 2 or 3 floors below us.
Within this area, 3 feet or more of snow had fallen, and up in the Woonsocket area and around Manville and North Cumberland, an area of 4 feet and above.
And how about you, Gary?
I think Gloria in 85.
Here it is, Hurricane Gloria, one of the most powerful hurricanes that I've seen in the Atlantic Ocean. Wind
it went over Connecticut, but we were on the east side of it. And if I recall correctly, we didn't get much rain. We got a lot of wind, but we got a lot of salt water on the power lines.
We're getting some very strong wind gusts up to around 50 miles per hour.
And so although there weren't a lot of power outages initially, there started to be power outages after that because of all the salt getting on the power lines and the capacitors up there. So we had off and on power outages for a week or so after that. And of course, Bob, going up into Buzzards Bay, that was pretty interesting. And unfortunately for the people over there, some houses got moved away and stuff like that. And, one blizzard we had.
April Fool's Storm 97?
Yes, which we had like 30 inches of snow inland and about 3 on the coast.
Yeah.
That was a fascinating storm from the forecast point of view of trying to get it right. And, you drive a mile and you increase an inch as you drive up through the state. So that was pretty amazing as well.
This may be the first time that a lot of the viewers are seeing both of you in a while. Certainly, they've seen Gary more recently. But how are both of you doing?
I'm doing fine. Living in Florida, we've been here for 12 years, and living in the Villages, Florida, which is a very nice retirement community. Lots to do. It's in Central Florida, not too far from Ocala, and a little bit north of Orlando. And a lot to do here, and the weather, we like. Let's say we got rid of the ice and snow. I'll put it that way.
It's kind of fun, we don't have to do anything all day, except get up, eat, go to bed,
play golf,
play some golf. That's right.
Yeah.
I just put a hardwood floor in up here in this room, like the 2x4s you nail down. I just did that, so. I keep busy with projects. The grandkids are here, 5 miles away from us.
I'd just like to say how fortunate I feel that I got to work with both of you. As someone who grew up in this area, I did literally grow up watching both of you, and to be able to work with you here at NBC 10 and throughout my career. I mean, really, you were the inspiration for me to get into this business. I first met John as a college student at a different TV station, and then I got to work with him there as well as here at NBC 10, and of course, working with Gary closely. Right toward the tail end of your career. So you carried Southern New England through so many memorable storms. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all the viewers and myself for all the work that you did throughout your career.
What a treat to have Mark, Gary, and John all together again, even though it was virtual.
Yeah, that virtual, that's been a big change for us. Well, just in recent years, to be able to do remote interviews when we can't talk to someone in person. There have been a lot more changes we want you to know about, so stay with us. We're going to show you those coming up next.
Here's a bit of WJAR trivia. Which star of the Mary Tyler Moore Show was an announcer and entertainer in the early days on WJAR? Gavin MacLeod, Ted Knight, Ed Asner, or Betty White? The answer when we come back.
Hi, guys. Hi, Ted.
If you guessed Ted Knight, you guessed right. Before he was the pompous anchorman on a sitcom, the World War II vet wore a lot of hats on WJAR.
We did a thing called Milkman Ted, put him on late at night, I guess it was after the news, and we would bring in whatever type of celebrity guests we could find, or non-celebrity guests, and then he had a little children's show with a puppet called Bernard.
Bernard was next seen on Lassie with Ted Knight as Best Supporting Actor. Later in the mid-50s, the Tip Top Circus as the ringmaster, Ted Knight.
A few times over the years, we've turned the cameras on ourselves, taking you behind the scenes to show what we do here.
We haven't done that in 30 years, and so much has changed.
From Television 10, Southeastern New England's leading news station, this is News Watch 10.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Sweeney.
And I'm Doug White. Here's what's happening tonight. Governor Garrity has...
What's happening on the air every night at 6 p.m. really begins happening in the newsroom every morning around 6 a.m.
It is 4 o'clock in the morning. Monica Rogers is halfway through her 8-hour shift as nightside anchor.
That was then. This is now. Each workday begins even before the last one ends. It's a 24-hour cycle. Around 11:30 p.m., the night team passes the torch, along with any important information, to the sunrise producers, who settle in to start preparing for the morning newscasts. Over the next several hours, they'll write scripts, edit video, and assign stories to the reporters and photographers who start their day around 3 a.m. Anchors and directors start work soon after that, and it all comes together in time to go live at 4:30 in the morning.
On turn10.com or our NBC 10 News app.
Once the show is underway, planning begins for the rest of the day, much as it had then.
Frank Coletta is the assignment editor, kind of the traffic cop of the newsroom.
All right. Weekend? Yeah, not bad. We have some kind of gangland murder?
The folks back in the newsroom are already preparing for the News Watch at noon.
Now, if they're saying that this is a murder,
a homicide.
I'm wondering if you folks happen to have a photograph.
Jim Martin's early morning voice begins to boom over the din of phones and scanners.
Now the police and fire scanners are still here.
Ingest that stuff and then start editing for day.
Phones still ring, but with a different tone. And assignment editor Artie Teft is running the show.
Robert Perry, murder indictment.
It still has to go to the Senate and then...
Now, as then, there are meetings, many meetings.
The morning meeting includes news director Steve Kaminas.
Okay, let's go, because I know we got a rough day.
Executive producer Jim Valentine. He and Kaminas are in charge of the overall operations of the newsroom. And also in on this meeting is Frank Fortin, the producer of the 6 o'clock news.
The man who heads up the entire news operation holds court at the 11:30 planning meeting. Larry Price is news director. Betty Jo Cugini, his assistant. They listen as Jim Martin outlines who's doing what and where so far.
Okay, primary New Hampshire.
The first planning meeting of the morning now is done virtually.
The other thing we could do is send a news crew up there.
You can actually be live from the red carpet.
Later, the more familiar sight of colleagues gathered around a conference table.
Tom Brady arrival obviously will just shift.
But still with a virtual option. The purpose remains the same. Choose the stories of the day, discuss possible angles, and assign news crews. Once everyone gets to work, it's easy to see how so much more of what we do has changed.
It'll be one or the other. One will go to 6, one will go to 5:30. We'll wait and see what the reporters bring back.
Channel 10 produces 5 different newscasts each weekday.
In 2024, NBC 10 produces 6 hours of news and a lifestyle show for television each weekday and another 7 hours of news over the weekend. Field crews are also constantly feeding images and information back for our website.
In 1979, we were still using manual typewriters and editing from bulky videotapes. By 1992, we were using computers with early newscast production technology, still editing video on tape. Now, our systems are much more sophisticated. Show rundowns and scripts are connected seamlessly with digital editing systems. And video editing can be done in edit booths, on desktop computers, and even on laptops in the field.
KCI 683 base to Bob Emerson.
Instant communication with crews in the field has always been critical, especially in the case of breaking news.
Okay, you want to start heading to Prairie Avenue? We have a working fire.
But now there are cell phones. No need to rely on two-way radios. And speaking of crews in the field, that's where one big change is very evident. For decades, those were always two-person teams, a reporter and a photographer. That is still the case sometimes, but more and more across the TV news industry, you'll see multimedia journalists, individuals who work mostly alone to gather information, shoot video, write scripts, and edit their stories. They're well-trained and multi-talented.
If all we have is a 30-second story.
I think Bob's piece should run at 6. I'm not saying it shouldn't. I think it should run at 6.
Time-wise, I can fit it all in. Yeah. Can you do it in, no more than 40 seconds?
It's now 3:30 in the afternoon. The night shift of anchors, reporters, and technicians checks in. Producers brief the on-air folks on what to expect.
The night team is already back to prepare for the 11 o'clock show, even as it's full speed ahead to prepare for newscasts that now start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Today, that driver is speaking with NBC 10.
Broadcast production technology has changed by leaps and bounds over the past several decades as well.
Tossed to anchors.
We all used to juggle piles of paper scripts, but now those are accessed through the computer and loaded into iPads.
They give me the
There's no margin of error. A news broadcast is a live event.
It's still true that there's little margin for error, but the newscast director now presides over a complex computer program rather than a large team of technicians.
When I first started, a crew in a control room was probably about 10 to 12 people.
You know, we had an operator for video, for graphics, for audio, camera operators, and now doing a show, it's just myself and a producer. That's it. So the automation sequence that you see behind me pretty much does everything. It does video playback, it does the graphics, it adjusts the audio levels, it'll move the cameras. It's pretty much a one-man band.
It all works, most of the time.
Yeah, go to the stop that's next.
Going back to him?
Go back to him.
By the way, some technology hasn't changed all that much since the 1980s.
In the studio, Gary works against a plain green wall. His camera electronically rips out anything it sees as that shade of green and inserts his weather graphics. A monitor to his left and right help him point to the right state at the right time.
I think that's what we're going to be dealing with later on tonight.
At 55 to 60 degrees.
The green chroma key wall still works its magic, but it's been improved to be more crisp and clear over the decades. Something else that has changed drastically over the years, who is bringing you the news?
We'll show you that evolution just ahead.
Here's a bit of WJAR trivia. WJAR has been an NBC affiliate since the beginning. But because we were the first Rhode Island TV station on the air, we broadcast programs from more than just the NBC network. How many more? Was it 1, 2, 3, or 4? The answer when we come back. WJAR initially broadcast programming from 3 networks other than NBC. They were ABC, CBS, and Dumont. The Dumont network went off the air in 1956.
What used to be a male-dominated profession, TV news, has changed over the years.
Today, more women are working in the newsroom than men, and we can thank those early female trailblazers for making it easier for us. Many women hosted TV shows here on Channel 10 in the early days of broadcasting, except in the news department. Those jobs were mainly reserved for men through most of the 1970s. Then along came Sarah Y. She was among the first women to break into TV news, but there was resistance.
They wanted me to do what were then sort of traditional women's stories. I wanted to prove myself by doing the same stories that the guys were doing.
From field reporting to live election coverage, she did prove herself. Sarah Y. even anchored the news, just not on the weeknight 6 and 11 o'clock newscasts. Those remained an all-male lineup until the early 1980s, when I was the first woman at WJAR to regularly anchor an evening broadcast, weeknights at 11 p.m. with Doug White, after the departure of John Sweeney. Then Kathy Ray joined Doug at 6 p.m., and it was determined broadcasters like Sarah Y. who helped pave the way for the next generation of reporters, who not only report and anchor, but these days often shoot and edit their own stories and write articles for the web, turn-to-10.com, and social media, too. They're called multimedia journalists, and they lug around a lot of equipment.
I get a lot of men coming up to me asking me if I need an extra hand because I have a tripod in one hand and then my camera bag in the other.
NBC 10 reporter Temitope Adlea says working solo has its challenges, but she still loves broadcast journalism.
It's hard, but then you just realize at the end of the day, it's worth it because I'm getting this amazing story out to these viewers, and that's all that matters to me.
Well, congratulations.
Barbara Morse has worked here for 29 years as an anchor and health check reporter while raising a family, and she has watched hardworking female broadcasters earn respect, covering everything from politics to crime.
You know the old saying, I am woman, hear me roar. And then there's the other one, we've come a long way, baby.
Thanks in part to someone challenging the status quo, giving female reporters a chance and developing raw talent.
Absolutely. And I think that has been the success of this station. Not to toot our horns, but we have so many women working here, worthy women, women on the street, shooting stories, reporting stories, on the desk, anchoring newscasts. It's just in the last 30 years, since I've been here, 30, it's come so far.
Bringing a different perspective to news coverage. A lot has changed for women since the early days of broadcasting. But whether pounding out a story on a manual typewriter or these days a cell phone, the goal is still the same. Getting the facts and delivering them to you.
As most of you know, I'm a Rhode Island girl. I got my first job in this business at WJAR-TV.
Meredith Vieira, Newswatch 10, Blackstone, Massachusetts.
And I learned at the feet of the very best reporters, the best producers, fantastic camera people, wonderful editors. All of them took me under their wing, and they made me into, I believe, the reporter that I eventually became by teaching me that journalism is an important gift to give to those around you, and to really instilling me the value of local news. It's where folks get their information. It keeps those around them, like the politicians, and on the straight and narrow. And it's a family for everybody who watches. And I never felt more like I was part of a family than I was in local news at WJAR. So thank you guys. Happy anniversary. 75 more, please.
Happy 75th anniversary, NBC 10 WJAR. I am so honored that I got to pass through your station and be a part of history. I met some of my very best friends there, and I wouldn't have traded my time there for the world. So thanks for letting me be a part of your history.
Hello, WJAR, and congratulations on your 75th anniversary. I am so proud that WJAR was the birthplace of my career, and it really was. You took a punt on me as an intern in 1982, you gave me my first job in 1983, and then you sent me on to CNN. And it has been an incredible thing, and I have never forgotten all that I learned at JAR and all the fun that I had. Doug White, the anchor, he was so nice to me. He used to call me Margaret, as in Margaret Thatcher, just because I had a British accent. Dave Baer, fabulous news director. Bud in the control room, the director, who really put the fear of God into me when I got my electronic graphics, otherwise known as fonts, wrong. And the great, fantastic Jim Terracani, who is head of the investigative unit, took me on board as an intern and really taught me everything I needed to know. In other words, gave me the foundations for where I am today. And everywhere I go, I always remember you at WJAR. So congratulations.
That quest for quality is something that is ingrained in all of us who work here at NBC 10, the people behind the scenes and those in front of the camera.
Well, up next, we'll introduce you to someone who's personified that for the past 54 years. Stick around. We'll be back to wrap things up.
Here's a bit of WJAR trivia. The first program aired on WJAR on July 10th, 1949 was a Boston Red Sox game. Who was the opposing team? New York Yankees, St. Louis Browns, Chicago White Sox, or Philadelphia Athletics? The answer when we come back. In the first program ever broadcast on WJAR, the Boston Red Sox played the Philadelphia Athletics in a matinee game at Fenway Park. The Sox won 11-10. Dom DiMaggio, Johnny Pesky, and Ted Williams all played in that game.
Well, we've shown you tonight that from the earliest days, our success has really been built on far more than the faces you see on TV.
For the past 5 decades, 54 years to be exact, one of our MVPs behind the scenes has been Larry Silva. Larry Silva joined WJAR in May of 1970 after working a few years at WSBE and WPRI. He's one of the people you can thank for helping to keep Southern New England safe and informed during the blizzard of '78.
I was trained by the people who went on in 1949. They were World War II people. You know, they've been through a lot, and us young kids just did what we had to do. And we stayed on the air around the clock and did everything we could do. It was good to give back to some of our loyal viewers.
An expert technician and a stickler for quality, networks came calling for help during several Olympic Games.
My first Olympics was for ABC in LA in 1984.
He actually pioneered a lot of the audio techniques that are used in television these days. He had the foresight to place microphones in strategic locations around a production. So in a basketball game, for example, he would place microphones under the baskets so you could hear the swishes.
But he never left WJAR.
I was offered jobs in New York City, jobs in Boston. I put my family first.
And he never stopped caring about what he does.
They ingrained in us like a work ethic and an institutional knowledge that really I try to carry that on.
Larry did right by his mentors. He learned so much, and then he passed that knowledge on to all of the other technicians who will carry it forward. As for Larry, well, he's heading off into a well-earned retirement. And we want to just thank him for all he has done. All of us at NBC 10 who were lucky enough to work with him, wish him and his family a happy and healthy road ahead.
Absolutely. We'll miss him around here. As we head into our next 75 years, we want to recognize all of our colleagues who work every day to maintain the legacy of those who came before us.
We appreciate all of you. For now, good night, and thank you for turning to NBC 10.